I spent 3 years shrinking myself to fit inside my sister's house, quietly paying bills while she told everyone she was saving me. The afternoon I finally moved out. Thinking I was free, my phone lit up with a Facebook notification. It was a photo of my empty room, captioned with 5 words that erased every sacrifice I had made. Finally, the freeloader is gone. I did not know it yet, but the real war had just begun. The last box felt heavier than the first 50, though they all contained the same mix of books, mismatched dishes, and clothes I had folded so small they looked like origami. I dropped it on the linoleum floor of the new apartment, and the sound echoed in a way that made my chest tighten. The space was small. It was a second-floor unit in a complex that had seen better decades, smelling faintly of lemon cleaner and old carpet, but the door had a deadbolt that I controlled. I stood there for a long moment, listening to the hum of the refrigerator. It was the only sound in the world, for the first time in 3 years. Nobody was calling my name. Nobody was asking where their gym shoes were. Nobody was sighing loudly in the kitchen to signal that the dishwasher needed unloading. I was 33 years old, and I was finally alone. The silence was supposed to be a victory. I had spent 8 months picking up extra shifts at the diner, stashing cash in a hollowed-out textbook, and selling my few decent coats to consignment shops to scrape together the deposit. I had moved out while my sister, Kara, was at work, and her kids were at school. I had left a note on the counter, polite and grateful, thanking her for letting me stay when my life fell apart 3 years ago. I wanted to leave with dignity. I wanted the transition to be soft. My phone buzzed in my back pocket. I pulled it out, expecting a text from Kara. Maybe she had come home early. Maybe she was angry I had not given more notice. Even though we had discussed me moving out for 6 months, it was a Facebook notification. I tapped the screen, and the app opened to a photo that made my stomach drop. It was the guest room I had just vacated. The bed was stripped to the mattress. The cheap rug I had bought for the floor was gone. The room looked stark, cold, and unmistakably empty. Kara had posted it 7 minutes ago. The caption was short. Finally, the freeloader is gone. Time to get my house back. I stared at the words until they blurred. Freeloader. The word felt like a slap. It was not just an insult. It was a rewrite of history. I scrolled down, my thumb trembling. The comments were already rolling in. A cousin from Ohio had posted 3 laughing emojis, Kara's best friend, a woman who had eaten dinner I cooked at least 20 times, wrote, "About time. Babe, you are a saint for putting up with that for so long." My aunt, who never called unless she wanted gossip, added, "Some people just refuse to grow up. Enjoy the peace and quiet." I sat down on the floor, right next to the box of kitchen supplies. The humiliation was a physical weight, pressing down on my shoulders. I wanted to type a furious response. I wanted to scream in the comments that I was not a freeloader, that I had worked 40 hours a week, that I was the one who scrubbed the baseboards and walked the dog and stayed up with her youngest when he had the flu so she could sleep. My thumb hovered over the reply button. I typed out, "I paid the electric bill last month." Then I deleted it. I typed, "I babysat for free every weekend." I deleted that too. Fighting in the comments section would only make me look unstable. It would play right into the narrative she was spinning. If I defended myself, I would look guilty. If I got angry, I would look ungrateful. I took a deep breath, the air tasting of dust and lemon. I did not reply. Instead, I took a screenshot of the post. Then I took screenshots of the comments. I opened a new folder in my photo gallery and saved them. I was not sure why I did it, other than a vague, desperate need to prove to myself that this was happening, that I was not crazy for feeling hurt. I put the phone face down on the carpet. Memories of the last 3 years washed over me, sharp and stinging. I remembered the day I moved in. Broken from a layoff and drowning in medical debt from a surgery my insurance had barely covered. Kara had opened her door wide, hugging me. "Family helps family," she had said. But the terms had shifted so slowly, I had barely noticed. First, it was just helping with the kids. "Since you are home anyway," she would say. So I did the school pickups. Then I did the homework supervision. Then I was making dinner 5 nights a week because Kara was too exhausted from her job as a paralegal. Then came the money. I remembered standing in her kitchen 6 months ago, holding a check for $300. It was half my paycheck from the diner. "Here," I had said, sliding it across the granite island. "For the rent," Kara had laughed, waving a hand dismissively while she poured herself a glass of wine. "Sadie, honey, $300 isn't rent. That wouldn't even cover a closet in this neighborhood. Just keep it. Buy the groceries this week instead." So I bought the groceries. The bill was $400. The next month, the water heater broke. "I am so short this month," Kara had sighed. Staring at the ceiling, and with the kids needing braces, I had paid the repairman $250 from my savings. It doesn't count as rent. She had told me, over and over, "You are just chipping in. You are family." And I had believed her. I had believed that because I was not writing a check with the word rent in the memo line. I was a burden. I had absorbed her logic until it replaced my own. I walked around that house on tiptoes, apologizing for my existence, trying to buy my right to be there with labor and cash that apparently vanished the moment it left my hand. And now, to the world, I was just the freeloader who finally left. I stood up, shaking my legs out. I could not dwell on this. I had an apartment to set up. I had a life to build. I needed to focus on the logistics of survival. I grabbed my laptop from my backpack and set it on the counter. The apartment came with a basic cable package, but I needed to set up the electricity in my name and transfer my banking address. I wanted everything clean. I wanted everything official. I logged into my bank account to update my billing address. The balance was low, barely $1,200 to my name, but it was mine. I navigated to the bill pay section to set up an automatic transfer for my new landlord. A red notification banner sat at the top of the banking dashboard. Action required. Verify recent activity on your linked account. I frowned. I did not have a linked account. I had my checking account and a small, sad savings account that currently held $5. I clicked the banner. It opened a window showing a credit card issued by the same bank. The nickname on the card was Household Expenses. The balance due was $4,230. I stared at the screen. The numbers made no sense. I did not have a credit card with this bank. I had a debit card. I had never applied for a credit card here. My heart began a slow, thudding rhythm against my ribs. It was probably a glitch. Banks made mistakes. I reached for my phone, my hands feeling cold, and dialed the customer service number on the back of my debit card. The automated system took 5 minutes of shouting representative before I got a human. "Thank you for calling," a woman's voice said. "My name is Brenda. Can I have your full name and the last 4 digits of your social security number?" I gave her the information. "I am looking at my online banking," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "There is a credit card listed here that isn't mine. It says $4,000 are owed." There was the sound of typing. "Okay, Ms. Coleman, I see the Platinum Rewards card ending in 4589. It looks like the payment is 30 days past due." "It is not my card," I said. "I never opened a Platinum Rewards card. It was opened 18 months ago," Brenda said, her voice taking on a skeptical edge. "It is listed under your name and social security number. 18 months ago, I was living in Kara's guest room. Can you tell me the address associated with the account?" I asked. "It is listed at—" She recited Kara's address, the house I had just left. "Okay," I said, the room starting to spin slightly. "And the phone number? Is it my number?" "I have a number ending in 7721, Brenda said. "My phone number ended in 0405. Kara's number ended in 7721. I felt a wave of nausea so strong I had to lean against the counter. "That is not my phone number," I whispered. "Ma'am," Brenda said, sounding impatient now. "If you believe this is fraud, we can transfer you to the fraud department. But I have to warn you, if this account was opened by a family member at your residence, the process is complicated." "Freeze it," I said. My voice sounded distant, like it was coming from someone else. Please just freeze the card so it cannot be used. I can lock the card, Brenda said, but the balance is still your responsibility until an investigation proves otherwise. I hung up. I stood in the silent apartment, the light fading in the single window. The shadows stretched long across the floor. Kara had a credit card in my name. No, that was too big. That was a crime. Kara was bossy. She was manipulative. She could be cruel. But she was my sister. She was the one who bought me soup when I had pneumonia. She was the one who let me live in her house when I had nowhere else to go. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe she had added me as an authorized user to help build my credit and forgot to tell me. But why would the balance be $4,000? And why would she use her phone number but my social security number? I needed to see the full picture. I sat down on the floor again, opening my laptop. I searched for free annual credit report. I had avoided checking my credit for years. Terrified of seeing the medical debt that had ruined me in my 20s, I assumed my score was in the gutter. I assumed I was unprovable for anything. I answered the security questions. Which of these addresses have you lived at? I clicked Kara's address. What is the monthly payment on your auto lease? I selected none. The report generated. I scrolled past the medical collections I knew about, and then I stopped. There was the Platinum Rewards card, open for 18 months. Balance, $4,230. Below that was a store credit card for a high-end furniture chain, open for 11 months. Balance, $2,100. Below that was a query from a car dealership from 3 months ago. A hard inquiry. Someone had tried to buy a car in my name. I felt like I was drowning. The numbers swam before my eyes. $6,000 of debt I did not know existed. And the dates? The furniture card was opened the same month Kara had redecorated her living room. I remembered her gushing about the new sectional. I got such a great deal on financing. She had said she had financed it in my name. I closed the laptop. I could not look at it. I needed to talk to her. This had to be a misunderstanding. Maybe she had mixed up our information. We had the same last name. We had lived at the same address. Maybe she thought she was helping me build credit and things got out of control. I needed to be calm. If I accused her, she would explode. She would tell me I was crazy. She would turn the family against me even more than she already had with that Facebook post. I picked up my phone. I navigated to our text thread. The last message was from 2 days ago. Make sure you clean the bathroom before you leave, I typed carefully. Hey, Kara. I am settling in. Quick question. I was setting up my bank stuff and I see a credit card linked to my name that has your phone number on it. Did you maybe use my info for something by mistake when we were doing household bills? I read it over. It was non-accusatory. It gave her an out. By mistake, I hit send. I waited. The minutes ticked by. I paced the length of the small apartment, 10 steps from the window to the door, 10 steps back. The phone dinged. A voice note. I pressed play. Kara's voice filled the empty room, bright and dismissive, with the sound of the TV in the background. Sadie, oh my God. Stop. You literally just moved out and you are already looking for drama? I don't know what you're talking about. We probably just got some mail mixed up because you lived here for so long. Do not start panicking over nothing. You are so stressed. Go enjoy your little apartment and stop obsessing. The message ended. She did not deny it. She did not ask what card I was talking about. She did not offer to look into it. She told me to stop obsessing. Mail mixed up did not create a credit card account with a $4,000 balance. I looked at the text thread again. I wanted to scream at her. I wanted to drive back to the house and demand to see the receipts. But I looked at the screenshot of the Facebook post in my gallery. Finally, the freeloader is gone. She had preemptively discredited me. She had painted me as a burden, a loser, someone who took and took. If I started screaming about credit card fraud now, who would believe me? The freeloader sister who can't manage her money? Of course she would blame the responsible, generous older sister who took her in. She had inoculated the family against the truth. I opened the family group chat. It included our mom, 2 aunts, Kara, and me, usually. It was a stream of memes and updates about the grandkids. I typed, "Hey everyone. Just wanted to say I made it to the new place safe. It is small but cozy." I waited, usually. My mom would reply within seconds. "Good to hear. Honey." 5 minutes passed, then 10, then 30. I saw the read receipts. Mom had read it. Aunt Linda had read it. Kara had read it. Nobody replied. The silence was heavy and deliberate. It was a wall. They were not just ignoring me. They were shunning me. Kara's narrative had taken hold completely. I was the ungrateful sister who had leeched off Kara for 3 years and was now causing drama on my first day out. I went back to the laptop. I opened a new document. I named it Timeline. I started typing. July 2023, moved into Kara's house. August 2023, paid $400 for groceries, cash. September 2023, paid water bill, $120. Kara said not to worry about rent. I typed until my fingers hurt. I listed every time I remembered handing her cash, every time I used my own money for the house, and then I listed the debts I had found today. Platinum card. Opened October 2024. Limit $5,000. Balance $4,230. Furniture store card. Opened January 2025. Balance $2,100. I worked until the sky outside turned black. I did not unpack a single box. I sat on the floor with my laptop plugged into the one working outlet, the blue light illuminating my face. At 2 a.m, I stared at the credit report again. I looked at the hard inquiries. There were so many. Attempts to open store cards, attempts to get loans. Most were denied because my credit was already poor, but the ones that slipped through, a chilling thought settled in my stomach. Colder than the draft from the window. Kara hadn't just been bad with money. She hadn't just borrowed my identity to make ends meet. She had called me a freeloader to cover her tracks. As long as everyone thought I was the financial drain, nobody would look at her finances. If the household budget was tight, it was Sadie's fault. If they couldn't afford a vacation, it was because they were supporting Sadie. I was the perfect excuse. I was the scapegoat that allowed her to live above her means while she quietly ruined my future to pay for it. She needed me to be the failure. I looked around my empty, dark apartment. I had no furniture. I had a negative net worth. I had a family that wasn't speaking to me. But I had the screenshots. I saved the document. I backed it up to the cloud. Then I created a second backup on a thumb drive I found in my purse. I was not going to reply to the Facebook post. I was not going to beg them to talk to me in the group chat. I closed the laptop. Finally, the freeloader is gone. She had written. She was right. The version of me that absorbed the blame was gone. The sister who kept the peace was gone. I lay down on the floor, using a sweater as a pillow, and stared at the ceiling. I was terrified. But for the first time in 3 years, the fear wasn't vague. It was sharp. It was useful. I knew the truth now. And I was going to write it down, receipt by receipt, until it was heavy enough to break them. The lobby of the credit union was aggressively quiet. It smelled of stale coffee and photocopier toner, a scent that somehow amplified the nausea rolling in waves through my stomach. I sat in a burgundy vinyl chair, clutching a folder of printed screenshots and the initial credit report I had pulled at 2 a.m. A man in a short-sleeved dress shirt opened a door and called my name. Sadie Coleman? I followed him into a small office. His desk was cluttered with family photos, kids in soccer uniforms, a dog wearing a bandana. It looked like a normal life. It looked like the kind of life where siblings did not steal each other's social security numbers. I'm not sure where to start, I said, sitting down. I kept my hands in my lap so he would not see them shaking. I think I have been a victim of identity theft, but I think I know who did it. The loan officer, whose name tag read David, nodded as if he heard this 10 times a day. He pulled up a screen and asked for my information. I watched him type, his face impassive. "We can place a freeze on your credit right now." David said, "That stops anyone from opening new accounts." That is step 1. Step 2 is filing disputes for the accounts that are not yours. You said these are linked to a family member? My sister. I said, the words tasted like ash. I lived with her for 3 years. I just moved out yesterday. David stopped typing and looked at me. His expression softened. Shifting from bureaucratic efficiency to something bordering on pity. I see this a lot, he said gently. We call it familiar fraud. It is actually more common than stranger fraud. The access is easy. The trust is there. Usually, people don't want to file police reports because they don't want to send mom or dad or their sister to jail. But I have to be honest with you, Ms. Coleman, if you don't file a report, the creditors often assume you authorized the spending. They assume you were complicit until the bill got too high. I didn't authorize it. I said, my voice was tight. I didn't know. Then you have to treat it like a crime. David said, because legally, it is 1, unauthorized use of personal information, forgery, wire fraud. If you dispute these charges, the banks will investigate. If they find proof it was your sister, they will go after her. Are you prepared for that? I looked at the photo of his kids on the desk. They were smiling, arms around each other. I just want my name off the debt. I said, then we dispute. He said, but you need to be very clear. No gray areas. If you admit to using the card even once, or knowing about it and saying nothing, you become liable. I left the credit union an hour later with a stack of paperwork and a head full of terms like affidavit of forgery and provisional credit. I felt validated, because David had believed me, but I also felt sick. By signing those papers, I was effectively launching a missile at Kara's house. I drove back to my apartment. I had no internet yet, so I tethered my laptop to my phone's data plan. I sat at the small kitchen table I had bought for $20 from a neighbor that morning, and I opened my banking history. I needed to understand the mechanics of the last 2 years. I downloaded 24 months of statements from my checking account. I opened a spreadsheet. I started matching dates. It was tedious. Grinding work. My eyes burned. But slowly, a pattern emerged from the digital noise. Every month, around the 15th. I transferred money to Kara. The memo lines were always apologetic on my end. For the electric, groceries, sorry it is late. For the kids, the amounts varied. $200 here, $300 there. I cross-referenced these dates with the withdrawal patterns I remembered from living in the house. On November 14th of last year, I sent Kara $300 because she said she was short on the mortgage. On November 15th, the bank statement for the fraudulent Platinum Rewards card, which I had accessed using the forgot password feature and the email I suspected she used, showed a charge for $350 at a luxury day spa. I stared at the screen. On March 3rd, I gave her $200 cash for emergency car repairs. On March 4th, the credit card statement showed a $200 charge at a high-end steakhouse. It wasn't just that she was stealing my credit. She was double-dipping. She was taking my cash, claiming it was for bills, and then spending it on herself while presumably putting the actual bills on credit cards I didn't know existed. Or perhaps she wasn't paying the bills at all. I felt a flash of hot, white anger. I had spent 3 years eating the cheapest ramen, skipping dentist appointments, and wearing shoes with holes in the soles because I thought I was a burden. I thought I was barely scraping by, contributing what little I could to a sister who was struggling to support me. But she wasn't struggling. She was skimming. I picked up my phone. I needed to test the waters. I needed to see how she would react if I asked for accountability without showing my hand. I typed a text. Hey, Kara. I am trying to organize my budget for the new place. Can you send me copies of the receipts for the shared bills from the last 6 months? Like the electric and water? I just want to see what my average usage was so I can plan. It was a reasonable request, a normal adult request. Her reply came 3 minutes later. Why? Just one word. I typed, just for my records. I want to see how much electricity we used in the winter versus summer. The typing bubble appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. You are literally obsessed with money. The text read, it is actually sad. You lived here for dirt cheap, and now you want to audit me? You are doing this because you feel guilty for leaving me in the lurch. Just stop. It is insulting. She was pivoting. She was making it about my emotions. My guilt. My character. She was not answering the question. I am not trying to be insulting. I wrote back. I just want the receipts. Do you have them? I don't keep trash. Sadie. I paid the bills. You gave me a little cash sometimes. End of story. Stop being weird. She didn't keep trash. Kara, who kept every birthday card she had ever received in a shoebox. Kara, who filed her taxes the second week of January every year. She was lying. I put the phone down. I didn't push it. I had the answer I needed. She would never give me the documents voluntarily. 2 hours later, my phone rang. It was Aunt Linda. Linda was my mother's sister. She lived 3 towns over and functioned as the family's unofficial news anchor. If you told Linda something, it was broadcast to the entire genetic line within 45 minutes. Sadie, honey, Linda said. Her voice was dripping with a concern that felt sticky. I am just calling to check on you. Kara called me. She sounds really worried. I stiffened. Worried about what? She says you're having a bit of a breakdown, Linda said, lowering her voice as if sharing a secret. She said you are sending her frantic texts about old bills and money? Honey, are you okay? I know being on your own again is scary, but you don't need to lash out at your sister. My grip on the phone tightened until my knuckles turned white. Kara had moved fast, faster than I expected. She knew I was digging, so she had immediately reached out to the family to frame my investigation as mental instability. If I was having a breakdown, then anything I said about credit cards or fraud could be dismissed as the ramblings of a crazy person. I am not having a breakdown. Linda, I said, trying to keep my voice even, I just asked for some old receipts. Well, Kara said you sounded paranoid. Linda continued, breezing past my defense. She said you are accusing her of things? Look, we all know you have had a hard few years. Nobody judges you for that. But Kara carried you. Sadie. She really did. You don't want to burn that bridge just because you are stressed out. I am not stressed, I said. I am just organizing my finances. Okay, well, just take a breath, Linda said. Maybe go for a walk. Don't harass your sister. She has kids to raise. I hung up. I sat in the silence of the apartment, feeling the walls close in. It was brilliant, in a sick way. Kara had used my vulnerability, my past job loss, my medical debt, to build a preemptive defense. I was the fragile one. She was the rock. Therefore, I was wrong. I needed to secure my perimeter. I grabbed my keys and drove to the post office. I rented the smallest P.O. box they had. I paid for 6 months in cash. Here is your key, the clerk said, sliding a small brass key across the counter. I held it in my hand. It was cold and heavy. This was the first thing in 3 years that Kara couldn't touch. I remembered something then, a memory that had been filed away under mundane, but now glowed with warning lights. I was back in Kara's kitchen, maybe a year ago. The mail carrier had just dropped the bundle through the slot. I had reached for it, intending to sort it. Kara had practically lunged across the island. I got it, she had said, snatching the stack from my hand. You go relax. Dealing with bills is stressful adult stuff. I don't want you worrying your pretty little head. She had laughed. I had laughed. I thought she was being protective. She had been intercepting the statements. She had been intercepting the warnings. I stood in the post office lobby and used my phone to change every password I had. Email, social media, bank accounts. I enabled 2-factor authentication on everything. I unlinked my phone number from any recovery options that might notify her. When I got back to the apartment, I filed the formal disputes. I did it online. I clicked I did not authorize this account for the Platinum card. I clicked I have no knowledge of this transaction for the furniture store. Then I saw something else. I was looking at the inquiries section of the credit report again, trying to be thorough. There was a soft inquiry from the local power company. That was strange. I hadn't set up my new electric account until yesterday. This inquiry was from 2 years ago. I called the power company. This is customer service. How can I help you? Hi, I said, I am checking to see if there is an account history under my social security number. One moment. The hold music was a tinny jazz saxophone. I stared at the peeling paint on the windowsill. Ms. Coleman? The representative came back. Yes, I see an account at... She read Kara's address. It was opened in June of 2024. It is currently active and in good standing. I stopped breathing for a second. June 2024. That was right after Kara had complained about how expensive the summer AC bills were. She had told me the rate had hiked up. Who is listed as the primary account holder? I asked. You are, ma'am, she said. Sadie Coleman. And the contact email? It looks like karacoleman82@gmail.com. She hadn't just opened credit cards. She had put the house's electricity in my name. Is the bill being paid? I asked. Yes, it is on autopay, the rep said. I closed my eyes. This was different. The credit cards were greed. This was structural. She had moved the utility into my name, likely because her own credit was shot or she owed them money on a previous account. She was using me as a utility mule, and the worst part was, I had been paying her rent that was supposed to cover these bills. I was paying her to pay a bill that was in my name, which she was paying with money she took from me, while telling me I was a freeloader. Ma'am, are you there? I need to close this account. I said, I do not live there anymore. We can schedule a disconnect. The rep said, no. I said, I thought about the kids. If I cut the power, the kids would suffer. Kara would spin it as me being vindictive. Don't disconnect it yet. Just, can you send me the last 12 statements to my new address and remove the email address on file? I can do that. I hung up. I needed to be careful. I had just found a smoking gun. But if I fired it now, she would claim it was a misunderstanding. Oh, I just put it in your name to help build your credit score. Sadie, you should thank me. I needed her to admit it, or at least, I needed to catch her in a lie about it. I opened my text thread with her again. Hey, I wrote, I am filling out the rental application for a parking spot, and they want my utility history. Is the electric bill at the house in your name, or did we ever put it in mine? I can't remember. It was a trap. A gentle, bureaucratic trap. If she said it was in her name, she was lying. If she admitted it was in mine, she had to explain why she never told me. I waited. My phone rang. It was Kara. I didn't answer. It rang again. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, a voice note arrived. Sadie, pick up the phone. It is so annoying when you text these weird formal questions. Just call me. She wouldn't put it in writing. She knew. Somewhere in her lizard brain. She knew that text messages were evidence. I typed back, I am at work. Can't talk. Just need a yes or no for the form. Another voice note. You are being ridiculous. I don't know. Sadie, I think it is in my name. Why would it be in yours? You never paid the deposit. Just put my name down if they need a reference. God, you are making everything so complicated. I think it is in my name. A lie. Why would it be in yours? A deflection. I screenshot the conversation. The next few days were a blur of work and paperwork. I got a job at a logistics firm. Entry level. Data entry. But it paid $4 more an hour than the diner and offered health insurance. I was good at it. I was good at details. The manager, a stern woman named Mrs. Gable, complimented my organization. You catch things other people miss. She told me on Friday, we are going to move you to the accounts receivable team starting Monday. It comes with a raise. I felt a spark of pride. It was the first good thing that had happened in years. I walked out of the office feeling like maybe, just maybe, I could survive this. I was unlocking my car when my phone buzzed. It was Kara. Hey, heard about the new job from Mom. So proud of you. The exclamation points felt manic. Thanks. I texted back, I am excited. Listen, she wrote immediately. Since you are going to have a real income now, I need a huge favor. The van is dying. I found a great deal on a used SUV, but my credit is still dinged from the divorce. If you could just co-sign. I will make all the payments. It would be a huge help for the kids. They need a safe car. I stared at the message. The audacity was breathtaking. She had stolen my identity, lied about my bills, trashed me on Facebook, and now, the second she sniffed a little bit of stability in my life, she wanted to attach herself to it legally. She didn't just want a car, she wanted to reestablish the financial tether. If I co-signed, I was on the hook. I was back under her control. I can't do that. Kara, I typed, I am trying to fix my own credit right now. Sadie, please. She wrote, I let you live here for free for 3 years. I fed you. I housed you. You owe the family for everything. This is the least you can do. There it was. The transactional guilt, the ledger she kept in her head where I was always in the red. I can't. I wrote, the answer is no. I waited for the explosion. It didn't come in a text. 10 minutes later, my phone pinged with a Facebook notification. Kara had updated her status. It is funny how quickly people forget who helped them when they were at rock bottom. Some people get a little bit of money and think they are better than the family who saved them. Selfishness is a disease. Ungrateful family, first true colors. I sat in my car in the parking lot of my new job. The sun was setting, casting long orange shadows across the asphalt. I read the post. I saw the likes rolling in. I saw the comments. Preach, girl. Karma sees everything. She was escalating. She was taking the private conflict and turning it into public theater. She wanted to shame me into compliance. She thought that if she humiliated me enough, I would break. I would co-sign the loan just to make the post stop. I didn't reply. I didn't comment. I took a screenshot. I opened my folder. I added the screenshot of the post. I added the screenshot of the text asking for the cosign. I added the screenshot of her claiming the electric bill was in her name. I wasn't going to cosign alone, but I was going to make sure that by the time I was done, she wouldn't be able to get a loan from a lemonade stand. I started the car and drove home. The law office was located in a strip mall between a dentist and a vacuum repair shop, a humble setting that betrayed the sharpness of the man sitting behind the desk. Mr. Henderson was a consumer rights attorney with graying temples and eyes that seemed to have read every fine print ever written. He charged me $200 for the consultation, money I had squeezed out of my first paycheck from the logistics firm, but within 10 minutes, I knew it was the best investment I had made in a decade. So, let me get this straight. Mr. Henderson said, leaning back in his chair, you have unauthorized credit accounts, a utility bill in your name that you did not open, and a family member who is aggressively trying to discredit you socially. Yes, I said, that is the short version. He took off his glasses and cleaned them with a microfiber cloth. Sadie, you need to understand the difference between family disputes and fraud. In the eyes of the law, there is no such thing as borrowing a social security number because you are sisters. There is unauthorized use, and there is identity theft. The banks do not care about your childhood or who babysat whom. They care about liability. He put the glasses back on. If you pursue this, you are not just clearing your credit, you are accusing your sister of a felony. Are you ready for that? Because the moment we file an affidavit of forgery, the bank turns the investigation over to their fraud department, and if the amount is high enough, they contact the police. I looked at the diploma on the wall. I thought about the Facebook post. I thought about the freeloader comment. I am not trying to send her to jail. I said, I just want my life back. To get one. You might have to risk the other. He said. But right now, you are in the information gathering phase. Do not accuse her again. Do not tip your hand. Let her think you are confused. Let her think you are weak. If she thinks you are a threat, she will destroy the evidence. If she thinks you are just a nuisance, she will get sloppy. He tapped the folder I had brought. Document everything, dates, times, IP addresses if you can get them, and stop talking on the phone. If it is not written down, it did not happen. I left his office with a buzzing sensation in my head. It was the feeling of a plan forming, a rigid structure rising out of the chaos. That night, I turned my apartment into a war room. I requested my full credit reports from all 3 major bureaus, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. When the PDFs arrived in my email, I printed them all out. I taped them to the wall of my living room, overlapping the pages until they formed a tapestry of financial data. I went through them line by line with a yellow highlighter. I looked for the contact information associated with the inquiries. On the Platinum Rewards card application, the email listed was sadiecoleman82@gmail.com. I stared at it. I was born in 91. Kara was born in 82. I checked the furniture store application. The email was skolmanhouse@yahoo.com. I checked the utility account. Kara Coleman, 82@gmail.com. She was inconsistent. That was her weakness. She used her own birth year for a fake email account in my name. She used her own email for the utilities. She was mixing her identity with mine, blurring the lines because in her head, there was no line. What was mine was hers. I highlighted the phone numbers on 4 different credit inquiries. The phone number listed was hers. It was a fingerprint. It was undeniable. I was in the middle of highlighting a rejected application for a store credit card at a children's clothing boutique when my phone lit up. It was my mother. Sadie, the text read. We are having a family dinner on Sunday. Roast chicken. Just us. Kara wants to clear the air. Please come. We miss you. I stared at the screen. Clear the air. It sounded like a trap. It sounded like an ambush. My first instinct was to say no. I wanted to stay in my fortress of paper and highlighters. But Mr. Henderson's voice echoed in my head. Let her think you are confused. Let her think you are weak. If I refused, I was the stubborn, grudge-holding sister. If I went, I could see what they were planning. I could gather intel. Okay. I typed back. I will be there. I did not go alone. Not really. I asked my new coworker, a sharp-witted girl named Maya who worked in dispatch, if she wanted to make $20 and get a free coffee. I need you to park down the street. I told her as we drove toward Kara's subdivision, just sit in your car, if I'm not out in an hour, or if I text you an SOS, you call me and say there's an emergency at the warehouse. Maya looked at me, her eyes wide. Girl, is this a family dinner or a hostage exchange? It is a bit of both. I said. I parked my car 2 houses down. Facing the exit of the subdivision, I did not pull into the driveway. I did not want to be blocked in. Walking up the driveway felt like walking into a dream I had woken up from, but was being forced to re-enter. The house looked exactly the same. The wreath on the door, the tricycle on the lawn. It was the set of a play where I had been a prop for 3 years. Kara opened the door before I could knock. She was wearing an apron. She looked tired. Her hair pulled back in a messy bun. She gave me a sad, soft smile that didn't reach her eyes. Hey, she said. I am glad you came. She hugged me. It was a loose, performative hug. I felt her body tense against mine. Hi, Kara, I said, inside. The house smelled of rosemary and roasted chicken. It was the smell of Sunday. My mom was in the kitchen, tossing a salad. My Aunt Linda was sitting at the island with a glass of wine. There she is, Mom cried, rushing over to squeeze me. Oh, look at you. You look thin. Are you eating? I am eating fine. Mom, I said, we just want peace, Aunt Linda said from her perch, raising her glass. That is all we want. Family is everything. We sat down to eat. The conversation was strained. A thin layer of ice over a deep, dark lake. They asked about my job. I gave vague answers. They asked about the apartment. I said it was clean. Then, as the plates were being cleared, the performance began. Kara set her fork down. She looked at me across the table, her expression shifting into a mask of wounded benevolence. Sadie, she began, her voice trembling slightly. We invited you here because we are worried. This whole thing, the texts, the questions about receipts, the defensiveness, it is not like you. We know you are under a lot of pressure being on your own, but you are making everyone uncomfortable. We just want you to be happy, Mom added, reaching for my hand. But you can't go around attacking your sister. She helped you so much. I am not attacking anyone, I said quietly. I'm just trying to understand my credit report. Kara sighed. A long, exasperated sound. See? There you go again. The credit report. Sadie, you are obsessing. It is petty. Honest to God, it is petty. You are scrutinizing every little penny from the last 3 years because you want to find a reason to be mad at me. Because if you are mad at me, you don't have to feel grateful. She leaned forward. I think, for the sake of the family, you should delete those screenshots you took and stop with the weird formal texts. It is tearing Mom apart. It was a masterclass. She had pivoted the issue from theft to gratitude. She wasn't denying the money. She was making the act of asking about it a moral failing on my part. I looked at my mother. She looked anxious, nodding along with Kara. They wanted the boat to stop rocking. They didn't care who was drowning as long as the water was smooth. I took a sip of water. I kept my hand steady. I have one question. I said. I kept my voice flat, devoid of emotion. Kara rolled her eyes. Oh my God. Okay, one question. Then we drop it. Why is my name listed as the account holder on the electric bill for this house? I asked. The account was opened in June. I called the power company. They said it is in my name. The room went silent. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator. Kara did not flinch. She did not look guilty. Instead, she let out a short, incredulous laugh. Sadie, are you serious? She said. You opened that account. I stared at her. No, I didn't. Yes, you did, she said, shaking her head as if dealing with a confused toddler. Remember? It was one of your phases. You were on that kick about taking responsibility and building your credit score. You insisted on putting the bill in your name. You said, let me contribute. Let me build my history. I let you do it because you were so manic about it. I sat frozen. I had never done that. I had never insisted on putting a bill in my name. I had been terrified of debt. I had been hiding from creditors. The idea that I would volunteer to take on a utility account was absurd. But looking at Kara's face, I realized something terrifying. She wasn't lying, not in the traditional sense. She was rewriting reality in real time. She had told herself this story. Sadie wanted to do it. Sadie is crazy. Sadie has phases. Until she actually believed it. She had constructed a version of the world where she was the benevolent saint indulging her unstable sister. And any evidence to the contrary was just proof of my instability. She truly believed she was the hero, and because she believed it, she could sell it. I looked at Mom. Mom looked confused. I think I remember you talking about building credit. Sadie, Mom said uncertainly. She was planting false memories. She was gaslighting not just me, but the entire room. I felt a cold clarity wash over me. There was no reasoning with this. There was no clearing the air. I was sitting at a table with a woman who would cannibalize my reality to feed her own ego. I stood up. Where are you going? Kara asked, her voice sharp. We haven't had dessert. I have to go. I said, I have an early shift. Sadie, sit down. Aunt Linda said, do not make a scene. I'm not making a scene. I said, I am leaving. I walked to the door. Behind me, I heard Kara sigh loudly. See? She said to them. She just runs away. She can't handle an adult conversation. I walked out into the cool night air. I walked down the driveway, past the tricycle, past the illusion of a happy home. I got into my car and locked the doors. I texted Maya. I am out. Go home. Thank you. I drove 2 blocks before I had to pull over because my hands were shaking so hard I couldn't grip the steering wheel. I sat in the dark, breathing in the smell of old upholstery and freedom. My phone pinged. I picked it up, expecting a text from Kara telling me how rude I was. It was an email notification. My dispute with the bank regarding the furniture store card had been updated. Status: resolved. I opened the app. I expected to see account closed or fraud confirmed. Instead, I read, dispute denied. Documentation confirms account ownership. My heart hammered against my ribs. I clicked on the attachment labeled Proof of Validity. It was a PDF. It contained a copy of the credit application, and there, at the bottom, was a signature. Sadie Coleman. It was written in blue ink. It had the loops of my S and the sharp point of my C, but it was shaky. The slant was wrong. It looked like someone had practiced my signature 20 times and then tried to replicate it from memory. It was a forgery, a clumsy one, but good enough to fool a bank algorithm. I zoomed in on the date next to the signature, January 12th. On January 12th, I was working a double shift at the diner. I had a time card to prove it. I was nowhere near a furniture store. Kara hadn't just clicked a button online. She had physically signed my name on a piece of paper. She had committed forgery in the first degree. I drove the rest of the way home in silence. The radio was off. The world felt sharper, harder. The next morning, I called Mr. Henderson. They denied the dispute. I told him, "They have a signed application. Send it to me," he said. His voice was all business. "And send me 3 samples of your actual signature from that time period. Checks, leases, anything official. We are going to do a signature comparison." She forged it. I said, "I can see where she hesitated on the letters." "Good. Mr. Henderson said, "That is leverage. But listen to me. Sadie, this changes things. She has crossed a line from digital impersonation to physical falsification. You need to stop all informal contact. No more dinners. No more texts. If she wants to speak to you, she can send a letter. I am done talking." I said, "I promise." I spent the next week operating like a machine. I went to work. I came home. I organized documents. I did not log onto Facebook. I did not check the family group chat. I received a letter in my new P.O. box on Thursday. It was a plain white envelope with no return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a letterhead that read, "Apex Property Management." "Dear Ms. Coleman, this letter is to inform you of outstanding damages to the residents at Kara's address. Upon inspection of the vacating tenant's quarters, we have found significant damage to the carpet and drywall. You are liable for the repairs totaling $1,500. Please remit payment immediately to avoid legal action." I stared at the paper. Kara owned her house. There was no property management company. I Googled Apex Property Management. The top result was a defunct website for a company in Arizona. We lived in Ohio. I looked at the formatting of the letter. It was typed in Times New Roman. But the spacing was weird. It looked like something created in Microsoft Word by someone who didn't know how to set margins. The date on the letter was 3 days ago. Kara was inventing new debts. She realized that since I had moved out, she could no longer use my name for new utilities or intercept my mail to open credit cards. So she was creating a fictional paper trail to keep me in debt to her. She wanted to garnish my wages for a landlord that didn't exist. She was trying to pin liability on me from the outside. I felt a strange emotion then. It wasn't fear. It wasn't even anger anymore. It was disgust. It was the feeling of watching a magician whose trick has failed, revealing the sad, desperate mechanics underneath. She was flailing. She was throwing paper at me, hoping something would stick, hoping I was still the scared little sister who would pay anything to make the conflict go away. But I wasn't that sister anymore. I took the fake letter and added it to the folder. I paper-clipped it to the forged furniture application. I picked up my phone and called Mr. Henderson. "I have another document for you." I said, "She is manufacturing debt now. Bring it in." He said, "Sadie, we have enough for a civil suit. We have enough for a police report. What do you want to do?" I looked at the wall covered in credit reports. I looked at the highlighted phone numbers. I looked at the shaky signature that was supposed to be mine. If I filed a police report, it would be private until the arrest. The family would spin it. They would say I was vindictive. They would say I was sending the mother of 2 children to jail over a misunderstanding. Kara would play the victim, and she was better at it than I would ever be. I was building a picture of a predator, and when I was finished, I would show it to the world, not on Facebook, not in a whisper, but in a way that would leave her nowhere to hide. My living room wall had become a chaotic mural of my sister's betrayal. What started as a few taped-up credit reports had expanded into a floor-to-ceiling timeline, a truth map constructed from painter's tape, index cards, and printed screenshots. I spent my evenings after work standing in front of it, tracing the lines with a red marker, connecting the dates of my paychecks to the dates of her spending. It was no longer just a suspicion. It was a visible, breathing organism of theft. I had organized the timeline into 3 rows. The top row was reality. The days I worked. The days I paid her cash. The days I was home. The middle row was the lie. The text messages where she claimed to be broke. The Facebook posts where she complained about the cost of feeding me. The bottom row was the theft, the credit card charges, the utility bills, the loan applications. The most damning piece of evidence had arrived that morning from the credit bureau dispute results. I had requested the metadata for the online applications, the digital footprints left behind when someone applies for credit over the internet. It was a long shot. Mr. Henderson had told me, but sometimes the bureaus would release the IP addresses if you pushed hard enough on the fraud claim. I held the paper in my hand. Application date, October 12th, 2023. Device type, desktop computer. Windows OS, IP, location, Westlake Business Park. Building B. I knew Building B. It was the slate gray office complex where Kara worked as a paralegal. The application for the Platinum Rewards card, the one with the $4,000 balance, had been submitted at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. I checked my work schedule from that year. On that Tuesday, I was scrubbing tables at the diner from 11 in the morning until 7 at night. I did not have access to a computer. I barely had time to check my phone. Kara, however, sat at a desk all day with high-speed internet and my social security number memorized. She had opened a credit card in my name while sitting at her job, probably sipping the iced coffee I had bought her that morning. I taped the IP report to the wall, drawing a thick red line from Westlake Business Park to the Platinum Rewards account. It wasn't definitive proof in a court of law yet. Anyone could be at that office park. But combined with the phone number and the email address, it was a tightening noose. I stepped back, capping the marker. The pattern was undeniable, but knowing the truth and getting her to admit it were 2 different things. 2 days later, the atmosphere shifted. The silence from the family, which had been a cold, punishing wall, suddenly broke. But it wasn't with anger. It was with sugar. I came home from work on a Tuesday to find a gift bag sitting on my doormat. It was expensive, a heavy woven bag from a local boutique. Inside was a cashmere scarf, a jar of artisanal honey, and a card. I opened the card. It was Kara's handwriting, big and looping. Sadie, I saw this scarf and thought of you. I know things have been tense lately and I hate it. We are sisters. Let's just hit reset. I miss you. Love, Kara. I stared at the scarf. It was soft, the color of oatmeal. It probably cost $80. $80 was exactly the amount I had asked her for 6 months ago to buy work shoes. And she had told me she didn't have a dime to spare. I didn't bring the bag inside. I left it on the table by the door, feeling a strange vibration in my chest. It felt like the drop in barometric pressure before a storm. Kara never gave gifts without a reason. Her generosity was always a down payment on a favor she hadn't asked for yet. The ask came 3 hours later. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Kara. Hey, did you get the little care package? Just wanted you to know I'm thinking about you. I typed back, cautious. I got it. Thanks. Kara. The scarf is nice. The 3 dots of her typing bubble appeared instantly. Good. Listen, since we are talking, I have a tiny favor to ask. I am filing my taxes for last year and the accountant is being a pain about the head of household deductions since you lived here. He just needs a quick signature from you stating that you did not pay rent, so I can claim the full deduction. It is standard stuff. I can drop the form off tomorrow? I froze. If I signed a document stating I did not pay rent, I would be legally validating her narrative. I would be creating a sworn statement that I was, in fact, a freeloader. If I ever tried to sue her for the money I had given her, she would wave that tax form in court and say, "See? She admitted it herself." Furthermore, if she claimed me as a dependent or claimed the full household deduction while I was actually contributing, that was tax fraud, and she wanted me to co-sign it. The honey and the scarf were a bribe. She wasn't missing me. She was missing her tax break. I sat on my couch, the phone heavy in my hand, This was the test. She thought a little bit of affection would make me pliable again. She thought I was still the Sadie who would do anything to be liked. I typed, "I can't sign that. Kara, I did pay rent. I have the bank transfers to prove it. If you need to claim the income, you should declare it. But I am not signing a paper that says I live there for free." I hit send. I waited. The response was immediate. The mask didn't just slip. It disintegrated. "Are you kidding me? After everything I did for you? I bought you a gift today. I am trying to be nice. You are so ungrateful it makes me sick. It is just a piece of paper. Sadie. It helps me get a refund so I can feed the kids. But sure, go ahead and screw over your nephews because you want to be technical. You are a selfish, bitter person." I read the texts as they poured in. A stream of consciousness rage. Selfish, bitter, crazy. The transition from "I miss you" to "I hate you" had taken less than 60 seconds. It proved what I had begun to suspect. Her love was a currency, and she only spent it when she expected a return on investment. The moment the transaction failed, the affection was revoked. I didn't reply. I took screenshots of the exchange, the love bombing, the request for the signature, and the subsequent rage. I printed them out and taped them to the wall under the lie row. The next day, my phone rang from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, fearing it was another creditor or a flying monkey from the family, but something made me pick up. "Hello? Hi, is this Sadie?" An older woman's voice. It sounded raspy, like she had spent a lifetime smoking unfiltered cigarettes. "Yes, this is Sadie. This is Mrs. Moretti, from the cul-de-sac, next door to your sister." I pictured her instantly. Mrs. Moretti was the neighborhood watch personified. She spent her days gardening in her front yard, watching everything that moved on the street. "Oh, hi, Mrs. Moretti," I said, surprised. "Is everything okay?" "I am fine, dear," she said. "I heard you moved out. I just wanted to call you because, well, I am not one to gossip, but I don't like bullies, and I saw what your sister posted on the internet." My stomach tightened. "You saw the post. My granddaughter showed me. She said, 'Calling you a freeloader. That is a load of hogwash, if you ask me.'" I felt a lump form in my throat. "Thank you. Mrs. Moretti, I wanted you to know," she continued, her voice lowering, "that if you ever need someone to set the record straight, I am here. I saw you carrying those groceries in every week. I saw you mowing that lawn while she sat on the porch drinking wine. And I saw her at the mailbox. I sat up straighter. What about the mailbox? I saw her taking your mail. Mrs. Moretti said, more than once, you would be at work, and the mailman would come. She would go out, sort through it right there at the curb, put some of it in her pocket, and put the rest back in the box. I thought it was strange. Why put it in her pocket? Why not just bring it inside? Validation washed over me, hot and fierce. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't paranoid. "Mrs. Moretti," I said, my voice shaking slightly. "Would you be willing to write that down? Just a short statement saying you saw her intercepting my mail?" "I would be happy to," she said. "I never liked how she talked to you. You were a good kid. You didn't deserve that." I hung up the phone with tears in my eyes. It was the first time in months that someone outside the situation had acknowledged my reality. I wasn't the villain. I was just the girl who mowed the lawn. I added "statement from Mrs. Moretti" to my legal to-do list that weekend. I went digging for the final piece of the puzzle. I remembered that 3 years ago, when I first moved in. Kara and I had set up a shared folder on a cloud storage service to share photos of the kids. I hadn't logged into it in ages, but I still had the password. I opened my laptop and logged in. The folder was full of JPEGs, birthday parties, school plays, but in the subfolder labeled Docs, there was a spreadsheet, Coleman Family Budget 2024. My heart hammered. I clicked on it. It opened. It was a chaotic mess of numbers and formulas, clearly managed by someone who didn't understand accounting. But there were columns: mortgage, car, food, kids, and then a column labeled Sadie. I expected to see my contributions listed there, I expected to see the cash I gave her recorded as income. Instead, the Sadie column was full of expenses. Sadie, grocery overrun, $400. Sadie, electric spike, $150. Sadie, stress relief, $200. I looked closer at the dates. The Sadie, stress relief entry for $200 matched the date of a spa visit I had seen on her credit card statement. She had categorized her own spa day as a cost caused by me, presumably justifying it to herself that she needed it because dealing with me was so hard. I scrolled down. Sadie, inconveniences, $300. She was charging me for existing, but here was the kicker. There was no column for the money I gave her. The $2,000 I had contributed over the last 6 months was nowhere on the spreadsheet. It had simply vanished into the general pool, uncredited, while every phantom expense she invented was attributed to me. I realized then that this wasn't just about money. It was about identity. Kara needed to be the responsible one. She needed to be the martyr who was holding the family together. But the math of her life didn't work. She spent more than she made. She was drowning in debt. To reconcile her self-image with her reality, she needed a reason for the failure. She needed a sinkhole where the money disappeared. I was the sinkhole. She had cast me as the failure so she could remain the hero. If the budget didn't balance, it was Sadie's fault. If she had to open a secret credit card, it was to cover Sadie's costs. I was the essential prop in the play of her life, without me as the villain. She would have to face the fact that she was incompetent and dishonest. I downloaded the spreadsheet. I saved it to 3 different hard drives. On Monday morning, I walked into Mr. Henderson's office with a new confidence. I placed the flash drive on his desk. I have the IP address linking the fraud to her workplace. I said, I have a witness who saw her stealing mail. And I have her own internal ledger where she admits to spending money on herself and labeling it as my expense. Mr. Henderson plugged the drive in and scrolled through the files. He whistled low and soft. This is substantial, he said. This gets us past the he said, she said of domestic disputes. This is evidence of a systematic scheme. What is the next step? I asked. We send a formal cease and desist, he said. We demand she stop using your identity immediately. We demand a full accounting, and we prepare the civil complaint for damages. But Sadie, once we send this letter, the war goes hot. There is no going back. Send it. I said. The letter went out via certified mail on Wednesday. On Friday, the family counterattack began. It didn't come from Kara directly. She was likely too spooked by the legal letterhead to contact me. Instead, she deployed the guilt squad. My mother called me at work. I let it go to voicemail. I listened to the message in the break room. Sadie, I don't know what you sent to your sister, but she has been crying for 2 days. The boys are terrified. They don't understand why their mom is so upset. You are hurting the kids. Sadie, whatever this fight is about, you can't tear apart a home with children in it. Please, just withdraw whatever legal thing you did. We can work this out as a family. I deleted the message. Then came a text from Aunt Linda. I never thought you would be the type to weaponize lawyers against your own blood. Those poor children are the real victims here. Think about them. I sat at the break room table, my hands clenched around a mug of lukewarm coffee. This was their trump card. The children. They knew I loved my nephews. They knew I had stayed in that house for years, partly to protect them, to make sure they had dinner and clean clothes while Kara was working late. They were using the kids as human shields to protect Kara's fraud. I typed a single response to the group chat, my fingers flying. I love the boys, but this is not about them. This is about adult financial crimes committed against me. I will not discuss the children. I will not weaponize them, and I will not allow you to use them to silence me. If Kara is stressed, she should stop stealing my identity. I left the group chat. The silence that followed was brief. I knew Kara well enough to know she wouldn't take the hit lying down. If she couldn't guilt me, and she couldn't charm me, she would try to destroy me. She needed to prove I was the villain. She needed to reinforce the freeloader narrative before the truth of the lawsuit got out. Saturday night, I was sitting on my floor, labeling the final batch of evidence for the attorney. when my phone pinged with a notification. Kara Coleman mentioned you in a post. I felt the dread pool in my stomach. I opened the app. Kara had posted a screenshot of an old text message exchange between us. It was dated 3 years ago, right after I had lost my job and was recovering from surgery. I was on heavy painkillers, depressed, and terrified of the future. In the text, I had written, "I am so sorry. Kara, I feel like such a burden to you. I don't know how I will ever pay you back for letting me stay here. I am a mess." Kara had captioned the photo. Found this old message today. It breaks my heart how much I tried to help, and how quickly some people rewrite history to make themselves the victim. I accepted the burden because that is what family does. Shame on you for attacking the hand that fed you. The comments were sympathetic. You are a saint. Kara. Some people are just takers. She had taken a moment of my deepest vulnerability, a moment where I was apologizing for existing because I was sick and unemployed, and weaponized it to prove that I had admitted to being a burden. She was using my depression as proof of her financial martyrdom. I stared at the screen. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I felt a cold, hard resolve settle over me like armor. She was fighting with emotions. She was fighting with stories, with out-of-context screenshots, with social pressure. She was playing to the audience of our relatives and high school friends. But I had the math. I had the IP addresses. I had the bank statements. I had the forged signatures. I realized then that sending legal letters wasn't enough. As long as she controlled the public narrative, she would always be the victim, and I would always be the monster who sued her sister. She would spin the lawsuit as me being vindictive. She would lie about the outcome. I needed to end this in a way that she couldn't spin. I needed witnesses, not just Mrs. Moretti, but everyone, the family, the friends, the people she was lying to. I remembered that next weekend was her fresh start party. She had been planning it for months, a combination birthday party and housewarming to celebrate her new chapter, which I now knew was funded by my credit. Everyone would be there. The outline in my head clicked into place. I wasn't going to hide anymore. I wasn't going to send letters from a safe distance. I stood up and walked to the wall. I looked at the truth map. It was ugly. It was sprawling. But it was the truth. I grabbed a stack of manila folders. "Okay, Kara," I whispered to the empty room. "You want to tell stories? Let's tell the whole story." I started pulling documents off the wall. I wasn't taking them down to hide them. I was taking them down to copy them. I was going to the party, and I was bringing the receipts. The invitation was not sent to me, but in the age of social media, exclusion is just another form of notification. I saw the event page on Aunt Linda's profile. She had clicked, going with an enthusiastic thumbs-up emoji, Kara's Fresh Start Party. The banner read in curling, cheerful font, new beginnings, good vibes, and gratitude. Come celebrate the end of a hard chapter and the start of a better one. The date was set for Saturday. The location was the house I had scrubbed, painted, and paid to maintain for 3 years. The guest list included 40 people, family, neighbors, Kara's co-workers, and the church friends who had only ever heard my sister's version of the story. It was not just a party, it was a victory lap. It was a public cementing of the narrative she had built, that she had survived the burden of me and was now rising from the ashes of my incompetence. I stood in my apartment, staring at the screen. My first instinct was to hide. If I stayed home, I was safe. If I stayed home, I didn't have to see the pitying looks or hear the whispers. But if I stayed home, the lie became the permanent record. I turned away from the screen and looked at my wall. The truth map. It was no longer just a chaotic collage of pain. It was a weapon. I called Mr. Henderson. "She is hosting a party." I told him, "Everyone will be there. The people she lied to. The people she told I was a leech. And you want to go?" "Mr. Henderson said, "It wasn't a question. I want to correct the record." I said, "Listen to me carefully." "Sadie," he said, his voice dropping into the low, serious register of a man who had seen too many courtroom outbursts. "If you go there to scream, you lose. If you go there to cry, you lose. If you call her a thief, a liar, or a sociopath in front of witnesses without a verdict in hand. She can sue you for defamation, and she might win. I won't call her names. I said, "You stick to the documents," he commanded. "Truth is an absolute defense. You do not speculate. You do not say, 'She stole my money to buy shoes.' You say, 'Here is a withdrawal from my account, and here is a receipt for shoes on hers.' You let them draw the line. You are not the prosecutor. You are just the clerk reading the minutes." "I understand." I said, "Prepare a packet," he advised. "Redact your social security number. Redact anything irrelevant. Keep it cold. Keep it boring. Facts do not have feelings. Sadie, that is why they are powerful." I spent Friday night at the 24-hour copy shop. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, a sound that matched the buzzing in my nervous system. I created 10 packets. Cover page. Timeline of financial activity. June 2023 to present. Page 1. The bank statements showing my transfers to Kara, highlighted in yellow. Page 2. The text messages where she claimed the bills were unpaid. Page 3. The credit report showing the Platinum Rewards account opened in my name. Page 4. The metadata report linking the application to her workplace IP address. Page 5. The dispute response with the forged signature next to my real signature from my driver's license. Page 6. The cease and desist letter Mr. Henderson had mailed 3 days ago. I bound them with simple black clips. They looked sterile. They looked official. They looked like the opposite of a family drama. I stood in front of the mirror in my bathroom on Saturday afternoon. I was wearing a navy blue blazer and dark jeans. I looked like I was going to a parent-teacher conference. I practiced my lines, watching my own lips move. I am here to correct the record. I am not arguing. I have the documentation. My hands were shaking. I held them out in front of me until the tremors subsided. I was terrified. But beneath the terror was a cold, hard bedrock of necessity. I wasn't doing this for revenge. I was doing it because if I didn't, I would never be able to look at myself in the mirror again without seeing a victim. I drove to the house. The street was lined with cars. I recognized Aunt Linda's sedan. I recognized the neighbors' SUVs. I recognized the beat-up Honda of Kara's best friend, Jessica, who had once told me I needed to step up while I was folding her laundry. I parked 3 houses down. I checked my phone. I had texted Maya, my coworker, to be on standby. If I am not out in 45 minutes, call the police. I had written, it was melodramatic, perhaps, but I no longer knew what Kara was capable of. I grabbed the canvas tote bag containing the packets. I walked up the driveway. The garage door was open. The sound of pop music and laughter drifted out. I could smell charcoal and grilled meat. It was the smell of a happy summer Saturday. It made my stomach turn. I walked into the backyard through the side gate. There were balloons tied to the deck railing. "Fresh start," they proclaimed in gold foil. People were standing in clusters, holding plastic cups of wine and beer. My nephews were running through the sprinklers in the far corner, screaming with joy. I felt a pang of longing for them, but I pushed it down. This wasn't about the kids. Kara was standing on the deck, elevated above the crowd. She was wearing a white sundress, looking radiant and relieved. She held a glass of white wine in one hand and was gesturing with the other. "I just want to thank everyone for coming," she was saying. Her voice projected to reach the back of the yard. "Seriously, the last year has been, well, you all know, it has been a nightmare. But having this community, having people who know the truth and support me, it means the world. I finally feel like I have my home back. I finally feel like I can breathe without walking on eggshells." A chorus of supportive murmurs rippled through the crowd. "We love you." "Kara," someone shouted. "It is hard when family lets you down." Kara continued, wiping a theatrical tear from her cheek. "But you learn who your real family is. You guys are my real family." She was erasing me. She wasn't just lying. She was conducting a funeral for my reputation while standing on a deck I had helped stain 2 summers ago. I stepped out from the shadow of the trellis. "Kara," I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the murmurs like a knife. The crowd turned. 40 faces looked at me. Some looked shocked. Some looked angry. Aunt Linda gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Kara froze. The smile dropped from her face, replaced instantly by a look of pure, unadulterated panic that she quickly wrestled into a mask of indignation. "Sadie," she said, her voice tight, "what are you doing here?" I walked to the bottom of the stairs leading up to the deck. I stopped there, looking up at her. The dynamic was visual. She was the queen on the tower. I was the peasant in the mud. I needed to bring her down to eye level. "I need to speak with you," I said, privately, inside. I was giving her an out. I was giving her one last chance to keep this between us, to confess in the kitchen and spare herself the public flaying. But Kara didn't want an out. She wanted a scene. She wanted to prove to everyone that I was the unstable aggressor she had painted me to be. She laughed, a harsh, brittle sound. "Privately? No, absolutely not. You don't get to just waltz in here after everything you have done and demand my time. You are not welcome here. Sadie, look at you. You came to ruin this like always. Can't you just let me have one day?" She gestured to the crowd. "See? This is what I deal with. The entitlement." Jessica stepped forward, acting the part of the loyal guard dog. "Sadie, you need to leave. You are upsetting the vibe." I didn't look at Jessica. I kept my eyes locked on Kara. "I am not here to ruin anything." I said, "I am here to answer the question you wouldn't answer in texts." "I don't know what you are talking about," Kara snapped. "Go home, Sadie. Go back to your apartment and leave us alone." I reached into my tote bag. I didn't pull out a weapon. I pulled out a single file folder. "I am asking you in front of witnesses," I said, my voice steady and clear. "Why was a Platinum Rewards credit card opened in my name, using your phone number and your work email address, on October 12th of last year?" The silence that followed was total. The music seemed to stop. The sprinklers hissed in the background. Kara's face went white, then blotchy red. "You are insane," she said. "You are literally paranoid. I never did that. You are making things up because you are jealous. I have the dispute results from the credit bureau," I said, holding up the packet, "and I have the IP address log from the application. It matches the server at Westlake Business Park. Building B, where you work?" Kara gripped the railing. "So what? Anyone could have used a computer. You probably hacked me. You are obsessed with me." She was flailing. Hacking was a buzzword she didn't understand. I turned away from her. I looked at the crowd. I saw Uncle Robert standing near the grill. Robert was a retired claims adjuster for an insurance company. He was a man who lived and died by paperwork. He had never liked drama, but he respected evidence. "Uncle Robert," I said. He looked at me, his face unreadable. "I know you value fairness," I said. "Can you look at this? I just want someone to check the dates." I held the folder out. "Don't you dare take that." "Bob!" Kara shrieked. "It is fake. She forged it." Her reaction was too big. If she were innocent, she would have been confused, but she was terrified. Uncle Robert set his beer down. He walked over to me and took the folder. He opened it. He adjusted his glasses. The party watched him. He flipped the page. He flipped another page. "This is a dispute response from TransUnion," Robert said, his voice dry. "It lists a phone number ending in 7721 as the contact for the account." He looked up at Kara. "That is your cell number." "Kara, it is a mistake," Kara yelled. "Sadie probably put it there. She used my number to frame me." "And the email address?" Robert asked, reading from the page. "It says kcoleman_volunteers@gmail.com. Kara opened her mouth, but before she could speak, a voice piped up from the back of the yard. It was Sarah, a woman who ran the local animal shelter where Kara had volunteered briefly 2 years ago to look good on social media. "Wait," Sarah said. She stepped forward, looking confused. "That is the email she used when she signed up for the shelter shifts. I remember because I had to type it into the database. It is her burner email for signups." The air left the backyard. Kara stared at Sarah. The plausible deniability evaporated. If it was an email Sadie had framed her with, why would Sarah recognize it from 2 years ago? Kara's eyes darted around the yard. She was looking for an exit, for a friendly face. Aunt Linda rushed forward, seizing my arm. Her grip was painful. "Sadie, stop this," she hissed. "You have made your point. You are humiliating her. Look at her. She is your sister. Just put the papers away and we can talk about this inside. Don't do this in front of the neighbors." I pulled my arm away. I stepped back, creating space. I tried to talk about it inside. I said, "I tried to talk about it in texts. I tried to talk about it at dinner. You told me I was crazy. You told me I was petty. She is sorry," Linda pleaded, looking at Kara for confirmation. "Right. Kara? It was just a misunderstanding about money. We can fix money. But you are destroying her reputation. She destroyed mine." I said, "She posted on Facebook that I was a freeloader. She told everyone here that I drained her finances." I turned back to the crowd. I wasn't shouting. I was speaking to the jury. I didn't live there for free. I said, "I paid rent." I pulled a second packet from my bag. I opened it to the first page. On November 1st, I transferred $300 to Kara. She told me it was for the water bill. I pointed to a line on the chart. The water bill was $80. The other $220 went to a Sephora purchase on her debit card the same day. I flipped the page. On December 15th, I gave her $400 cash for the heating repair. There was no repair. The heating company has no record of a service call. But that same day, Kara posted photos of a new Michael Kors bag. Kara screamed. It wasn't a word. It was a sound of pure animal rage. "Shut up," she screamed. "Shut up, shut up, shut up. You ungrateful little bitch. I gave you a roof over your head. You gave me a roof so you could use my credit," I said, my voice finally rising, matching her energy but keeping it controlled. "You didn't take me in to help me. You took me in because you had maxed out your own cards and you needed a fresh identity to burn." "I am the responsible one," Kara yelled, her face contorted, tears streaming down her face, ruining her makeup. "I take care of everything. I take care of Mom. I take care of the kids. You are just a screw-up who got fired. You are nothing." She was cracking. The mask of the benevolent, long-suffering sister had fallen away, revealing the terrified, narcissistic child underneath. "If I am a screw-up," I said, holding up the cease and desist letter, "then why is my name on the utility bill you are currently using to keep the lights on in this house?" I held the letter up for Uncle Robert to see. "The electric account is in my name," I said, "opened without my consent. I am paying to light the stage where you are standing and calling me a failure." Kara lunged. It happened fast. She came down the stairs, her hand raised, fingers curled into claws. She wanted to slap me. She wanted to physically silence the voice that was dismantling her world. Uncle Robert stepped in. He didn't grab her, but he put his large frame between us. "Kara, that is enough," he said. His voice was stern, the voice of a patriarch who was done with the noise. "Step back." Kara stopped, panting, her chest heaving. She looked around the yard. People were looking away. Jessica was studying her shoes. The neighbors were whispering. The illusion was gone. The fresh start was dead on arrival. She looked at me with hate in her eyes, a deep, corroding hate that came from being truly seen for the first time. "You would destroy this family over paperwork." She spat. "You are disgusting." I looked at her. I felt a profound sadness, but no guilt. The guilt had evaporated the moment she tried to hit me. "You destroyed the family when you needed a villain," I said quietly. "I am just opting out of the role." I handed the rest of the packets to Uncle Robert. "Here's the rest of the proof," I said. "The police report is in there too. I haven't filed it yet. I wanted to give you the chance to tell the truth first." I looked at Kara. "You have until Monday to close the accounts and agree to a payment plan," I said, "or I file the report. And then it is out of my hands." I didn't wait for an answer. I turned around and walked down the driveway. I could hear her crying behind me, loud, jagged sobs that sounded performative even now. I could hear Aunt Linda trying to hush her. I could hear the murmur of the crowd, the sound of judgment shifting like the tide. I walked to my car. I got in. I locked the doors. My hands were shaking again, but this time, it wasn't from fear. It was the adrenaline crash. It was the physical sensation of a weight being lifted, a weight I had carried for 3 years. I looked in the rearview mirror. I saw people leaving the party. They were walking down the street, heads down, avoiding looking at the house. The party was over. I started the engine. I had corrected the record. I had stripped her of her weapon. But as I drove away, I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel happy. I felt empty. Mr. Henderson had warned me about the legal costs. He hadn't warned me about the emotional cost of winning. I had cleared my name, but I had orphaned myself in the process. I drove back to my quiet apartment, where the only thing waiting for me was a wall covered in red tape and the truth. The silence in the backyard was heavy, a physical weight that pressed down on the shoulders of everyone present. Uncle Robert stood in the center of the circle, the manila folder open in his hands. He was the anchor now, the only thing keeping the scene from drifting into total chaos. I watched his eyes scan the document I had placed at the very back of the packet. It was the piece of evidence I had hesitated to include because it was so damning, so irreversible. It was a formal letter from the furniture store's fraud department, dated just 3 days prior. "Read the last paragraph," I said softly. Uncle Robert adjusted his glasses. He cleared his throat. Based on a forensic review of the credit application, he read aloud, his voice steady but grim. "We have determined that the signature on the contract does not match the exemplar provided by Miss Coleman. Furthermore, the contact information linked to the digital signature, specifically the email address, has been traced to an account previously associated with the co-applicant's sibling, Kara Coleman." He looked up. He looked at Kara. "It says they have flagged the account for potential criminal prosecution," Robert said. "That was the final proof. It wasn't just IP addresses or phone numbers anymore. It was a third-party fraud department stating, in black and white, that Kara had committed forgery. The reaction in the yard was immediate. The murmurs stopped. The Fresh Start party had turned into a crime scene. Kara looked at the faces around her. She saw the shift. She saw Jessica step back. She saw her neighbors exchange glances that said, "I knew something was off." She saw her own mother cover her mouth, tears welling up. Not of defense this time, but of realization. Kara panicked. The arrogance that had fueled her for 3 years, the smug certainty that she could talk her way out of anything, finally evaporated. In its place was a frantic, desperate need to control the damage. "Okay, fine," Kara said. Her voice was high and breathy. She held her hands up, palms out, in a gesture of surrender that looked more like a spasm. "Fine. You want to be technical? Maybe I mixed up the cards. Maybe I used your name for a few things because my credit was shot after the divorce and I was trying to keep the house afloat for the kids. I was doing it for the family. Sadie!" She turned to the crowd, pleading. "I was doing it for us." Then she turned back to me, her eyes wide and manic. "Look, if it is about the money, I will pay you back, okay? I will write you a check right now. How much is it? $6,000? I will get my checkbook. We can settle this right now. You don't have to make it a police thing." The admission hung in the air like smoke. She had just bargained. She had just offered to pay back the debt she had spent an hour denying existed. By offering the money, she had confessed to the theft. I felt a wave of nausea. It wasn't triumph. It was the sickening realization that she had the money, or access to it, all along. She could have asked me. She could have been honest. Instead, she had chosen to steal my identity and destroy my reputation because it was easier than admitting she needed help. "I don't want your check," I said. My voice was calm, but my hands were shaking at my sides. "This isn't a loan. Kara, you can't write a check to fix a felony. I am offering to make it right," she screamed, stepping forward again. "Why are you being like this? I am offering to pay you. Just take the money and shut up." The room split. I saw it happen in real time. There were the people who looked away, staring at the grass or their plastic cups, desperate to preserve their own comfort. Wishing I would just take the money so the party could continue. These were the peacekeepers, the enablers, the ones who thought family meant burying the bodies in the basement. But there were others. I saw a cousin, Mike, a mechanic who worked hard for his money, looking at Kara with open disgust. I saw Mrs. Moretti, the neighbor, nodding slowly at me from the gate. And I saw Sarah, the volunteer coordinator. "Speak up again. You used her social security number," Sarah said, her voice shaking. "Kara, that isn't borrowing, that is stealing." Kara whirled on her. "Stay out of this, Sarah." Then she turned back to me, her face contorted into a mask of pure venom. She realized the check wouldn't work. She realized the charm wouldn't work. So she pulled the only weapon she had left. "You are a monster," she hissed, stepping close enough that I could smell the white wine on her breath. "You came here to humiliate me. You would destroy this family over paperwork, over money. You are willing to tear us apart because of a few bills." It was the ultimate guilt trip, the accusation that I was the one breaking the bond. I looked at her. I looked at the sister I had worshipped when I was 10. I looked at the woman who had held my hand when our dad died. I looked at the person who had systematically gaslit me for 3 years to fund her lifestyle. I realized then that the sister I loved didn't exist. She was a character Kara played when it was convenient. I didn't destroy the family. I said quietly. The yard was so silent that my voice carried to the street. "You destroyed it when you needed a villain." I didn't wait for her response. There was nothing else to say. The sentence hung there, finalizing the divorce between us. I turned around. "Sadie!" "Wait," Aunt Linda called out, her voice cracking. I didn't stop. I walked down the driveway, past the balloons that still bobbed cheerfully in the breeze. I walked past the cars. I walked to my sedan, parked 3 houses down. Behind me, the party dissolved into shouting. I heard Kara's voice rising in a shriek, blaming me, blaming Robert, blaming the world. I heard my mother crying. I got into my car and closed the door. The silence inside the cabin was sudden and absolute. I put the key in the ignition, but I didn't turn it. I gripped the steering wheel and let go. I shook. It wasn't a tremble. It was a violent shuddering that started in my chest and radiated to my fingertips. I gasped for air, feeling like I had just run a marathon underwater. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel like the hero in a movie who walks away from an explosion in slow motion. I felt emptied out. I felt like someone had reached inside me and scooped out my history, leaving a hollow space where my family used to be. I had won the argument, but I had lost the war, because the cost of the truth was everything I had known. I sat there for 10 minutes, just breathing, until my hands were steady enough to drive. Then I put the car in gear and drove away from the house, leaving the wreckage in the rearview mirror. The days that followed were a blur of bureaucratic quiet. On Tuesday, 3 days after the party, I received an email from the credit card issuer for the Platinum Rewards card. Subject: Dispute Update. Account ending in 4589. I opened it, my heart hammering. Dear Ms. Coleman, based on the documentation provided and the police report filed, we have determined that this account was opened fraudulently. We have removed the liability from your credit profile and notified the credit bureaus to delete the trade line. The account is now closed. I read it 3 times. $4,000 of debt, gone. It was a victory. It was the first tangible proof that the nightmare was receding. But the furniture store card remained under investigation. The utility company was still demanding payment for the last month of service, requiring me to send 3 more affidavits. Progress was real, but it was incomplete. Life didn't wrap up neatly like a sitcom. There were still phone calls to make. There were still forms to sign. But the silence from the family was the loudest change. The group chat remained dead. Nobody called to yell at me. Nobody called to apologize, either. The punishment of the silent treatment had shifted into something else. Avoidance. They were embarrassed. They didn't know how to talk to the woman who had exposed the rot in the foundation. I checked Kara's Facebook page one last time before blocking her. She hadn't posted in 4 days. The fresh start photos were never uploaded. Then, on Friday, she posted a single image. It was a quote against a black background. The saddest thing about betrayal is that it never comes from your enemies. She didn't name me. She didn't recount the story. She kept it vague, playing the victim to the audience that hadn't been at the party. While signaling to those who were there that she was still standing, she was still spinning the narrative, but she was doing it in a whisper now. Not a shout. She knew I was watching. She knew I had the receipts. I blocked her. Then I blocked Aunt Linda. Then, with a heavy heart, I muted my mother's notifications. I couldn't cut her off completely, not yet, but I couldn't listen to the guilt trips either. I sat in my apartment on Saturday night. It had been exactly 1 week since the party. The room was still filled with boxes. I hadn't unpacked my books. I hadn't hung my pictures. I realized I had been living in a state of suspension, waiting for the other shoe to drop, waiting to be dragged back into their chaos. But the door was locked. The lease was in my name. The bills on the counter were mine, and mine alone. I pulled a notebook from one of the boxes. I sat on the floor, leaning against the wall where the truth map had been. I had taken it down, shredding the timeline into confetti. I didn't need to see it anymore. I knew what happened. I opened the notebook to a blank page. I picked up a pen. I wanted to write a letter to Kara. I wanted to tell her that I forgave her, or that I hated her, or that I missed her. But I didn't write to Kara. I wrote to the version of us that was dead, to the family I thought I had. I wrote, I am writing this to say goodbye, not to the people, but to the role you made me play. I am saying goodbye to the freeloader. I am saying goodbye to the screw-up. I am saying goodbye to the little sister who needs to be saved. I learned this week that the price of your love was my submission. You only loved me when I was small. You only loved me when I was failing. Because my failure made you feel successful. The moment I stood up, the moment I did the math, the love turned into hate. I am keeping the receipts, not because I want to hurt you, but because I need to remember that I am not crazy. I need to remember that I paid my way. I am unpacking my boxes tonight. I am staying. I am going to build a life that is small and quiet and entirely mine. And for the first time, the bill for this life will be paid by me, and I will keep the change. Goodbye. I tore the page out of the notebook. I didn't put it in an envelope. I didn't look for a stamp. I walked to the kitchen sink. I struck a match and held it to the corner of the paper. I watched the flame curl the edges, turning the ink into ash. I watched the words disappear. Freeloader, family, love. I dropped the burning paper into the metal sink and watched it turn to black dust. I turned on the faucet and washed the ash away. Then, I walked back into the living room. I picked up a box labeled books. I cut the tape. I took out the first book and placed it on the shelf. Then the second. It was a slow work, rebuilding a life, but the rent was paid, the door was locked, and the story was finally, truly mine. Thank you so much for listening to Sadie's story. It is a hard road to walk when the people who are supposed to protect you are the ones you need protection from. If you have ever had to set a boundary that cost you a relationship, I want to hear from you. Where are you listening from today? Drop your city or country in the comments below. It is always amazing to see how far these stories travel. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more tales of justice, resilience, and the gritty reality of family drama, please subscribe to Revenge Stories. We dive deep into the messy, complicated truth of human relationships every week. And I want to know your thoughts. Do you think Sadie did the right thing by exposing her sister publicly? Or should she have kept it private for the sake of the family? Let me know in the comments in English. Until next time, keep your receipts.